I think it's really hard to find people who are empathetic to you when your child is crying while traveling or in any kind of public place. I remember this very clearly when Veer was really, really young. We had gone somewhere and we were on the plane ride back, and he cried and cried and cried and cried. And I was trying so hard to comfort him, so hard to just make him stop crying. And everybody was turning and looking at me. And it's horrible when, you have like everybody on that bus or plane or whatever just turning and all these eyes looking at you. And of course, the judgment is you are a bad mother. You have done something to make this child cry like this. Otherwise, why would the child cry? If you were a good mother, the child would not cry like that. So I think they're very, very judgmental towards mothers. I think we need to all just have a lot more empathy. I remember cut to earlier this year, I was in Singapore with my daughter. We were taking a flight back to Bombay, and we were in the waiting area before boarding the plane. And this woman came in, and she had a child who was crying. And I could make out, myself included, I looked at the child and I was like, oh God, a bawling child. This is a typical reaction that we all have. If you have a crying child on the plane, you've had it. And then I sat down, and everybody was looking at this mother and giving her dirty looks. And I sat and I just looked at this child. And my daughter said, Mama, what are you looking at? I said, this child is not just crying like that. This is something else. So I got up and I went to the woman and I said, and she looked at, and when she looked at me, I could see her first look, like that reaction on her face was, oh my God, she's come to tell me off about my child. And I just looked at her and I smiled and I said, can I help you? And she said, thank you so much. That's so kind of you. She's a special needs child. I said, I know, she's got autism. I've also got a child who's got autism. And the relief on her face, I'm not saying this to say, wow, look at me, I'm so great. But just that fact, I wish somebody had come and told me this on the plane, I wish someone had said, it's okay. And I said, she must have had a really hard flight. She said, I've come from Sydney to Singapore, and she cried the entire flight because her ears were hurting. People don't realize that kids with autism have a lot of sensory difficulties. And this poor kid must have had so much pressure on her ears, it must have been driving her bananas. And she said, everyone on that flight was shouting at me. And my heart just broke. I said, should we do something about it? She said, what can we do? I said, come, let's go talk to the officials. So I said, do you want me to talk or do you want to talk? So she said, no, I'll talk. So I came with her and I just stood over there. And she said, I have a child with special needs. Can you do something? And those Singaporean people, very, they were, the airlines, they're very kind of strict about these things. But they said, okay, we'll let you board last. So she said, they let me board last, thank God. So I said, listen, don't worry, it'll be fine. And then she got on, I boarded first and she got on after me. And I said, listen, I'm sitting right here, call me if there's anything. And fortunately, that child, poor thing, must have been so exhausted. She slept throughout the flight and it was okay. And she was fine throughout the flight, and then she finally made it back. But I cannot even imagine what that mother went through. Just yesterday, I was walking somewhere and there was this girl on a bus stop and she was in tears and throwing herself on her father, and her father was holding her. And what was so lovely to see is all the other people on the bus stop were surrounding this father and saying, Ami kai karu ka, madad karu ka, can we help, kuch kar sakte hain. And it was so sweet. I was so happy to see that. And we need these little pockets of people to become more and more and more. The first reaction we have is impatience. We don't kind of make any room for anyone who's slightly different. We are not perfect. All of us have something or the other that is different about us. We are certainly not perfect in terms of our personalities, our temperaments, our behaviors, especially as Indians. I can point out so many things that we do which is not perfect. But we expect everyone around us to behave perfectly. We expect everyone around us to behave in a way that fits in with the norm. I think as a society, we really need to make room for people who are different from us, because everybody has a right to exist. And just because somebody is different from you does not mean that they do not have the right to exist in the same space as you, because for them, you are different from the way they are. And whatever this kind of difference is, we just need to make room for it. We need to take a slight step back. Everyone talks about kindness and mindfulness and empathy. These are these token terms which people are going around tom-tomming about, and filling in LinkedIn pages about how I am mindful and I'm empathetic and things like that. But we need to really start practicing it. I mean, all it takes is just a little pause. All it takes is giving somebody the benefit of the doubt that maybe this person is doing something because of a particular way. So instead of, like, for example, everyone shouting at this woman on the plane, just take some time to just observe this child. Just see that this child is in obvious distress and is crying, not to make everybody else's life miserable, but because that child is experiencing something, that child is feeling something, and which is outside of your understanding, and so is crying like that. No child will cry for fun. No child wants to make their parents' life miserable. No child cries because it's fun to cry. Nobody wants to feel like that. And so there is a reason why this child might be acting in a particular way. And I think we just need to be able to understand and make room for that.